we welcome you in. It's time for another Gray Bar Sports Open Line right here on KMOX. My name is Matt Pauley. Have you for the next 2 hours. We will take you until 8 o'clock this evening. And go ahead and pencil this time in as time. Well, you should always be listening to KMOX. But really, even with some baseball left in the season, this kind of begins right now, right this very moment, kind of begins our sports open line season of the year. I always joke with people that I kind of have two jobs. I have one job during the baseball season, and I do one set of tasks and long days and long nights and everything. And then I have another job, which is hosting this show, because we don't have this show a lot during baseball season. Well, tomorrow the Cardinals are going to play in San Francisco. Our coverage doesn't begin until 8:20 tomorrow. So we've got a full 2-hour sports open line from 6 to 8. We've got that today. And then starting next week, we'll have sports open line just about every day. Once SLU basketball pops in, we'll be done early some nights. We'll have some Thursday night football games as well, and some other things every once in a while. But for the most part, you get sports open line, and I'm glad to be with you. So hopefully we can enjoy our time together. And even though it's not the off season yet, this show is very much, at least for the near term, and we'll see what happens on Monday, whether or not the Cardinals make any type of announcement. There's been a lot of discussion about whether or not they are going to call a press conference and make some type of an announcement regarding the future of the organization and changes that may or may not occur. If they don't do that on Monday, I don't know when they would do it. As Major League Baseball, they kind of frown on organizations making big announcements once the postseason gets started. Now, once you get to the World Series and you have some off days in the World Series, that's when teams can kind of come back around. And there's exceptions to the rule. Sometimes there's just, you can't get out of the way of a change being made after the postseason begins. But I'm curious to see whether or not the Cardinals are going to make any type of announcement come Monday. I think that's what I think most media members throughout the St. Louis area kind of have Monday circled as a day that we may have to go do some work that we don't know for sure what it's going to look like. I was just talking to somebody. If 2 weeks ago, if you would have asked me, do I think Oliver Marmol's back next year? I probably would have said 50-50. Now, I think he's back. 2 weeks ago, if you would have asked me whether I think John Mozeliak is going to be back as the final baseball decision maker next season, I would have said probably not. And now I'm not so sure. So if that's the case, like, what can they even announce at the end of the season? I don't know. It's a really weird time. And we're 4 days away from Monday and starting to potentially get some answers. And that's where I understand the job. I understand that hosting this show is talking to you. And so many of you want to see changes, and you want to see this person not in their job anymore, this person not in their job anymore. We have done nothing but talk about that, it seems like, for so much of this year. It's at times tiring. I want the narrative to change. I want to know the direction that this team is going in. And quite honestly, look, if we get into the offseason and it becomes abundantly clear that next season Oliver Marmol is the Cardinals manager, and that John Mozeliak is going to remain in his final season as the president of baseball operations, and maybe they do start a succession plan so we know who the president of baseball operations would be in that next year. But if that's the case, I don't want to spend the offseason just hearing from people moaning and complaining about the fact that that's the case. Like, at that point, you have to move forward and see what can the organization and what can the team do to make things better for next year and beyond. So again, it's not all about me. It's not all about the conversations that I do or don't want to have. I get that, but I am very much looking forward to us at least getting an idea or being given an indication on what things are going to look like from a decision making, from a front office perspective going into next season, so we can at least deal with those facts, as opposed to just the conversation of, well, this guy needs to be let go and this guy needs to leave and this needs to, like, let's at least see the path that they're going to put themselves on, and then we can have an intelligent conversation from there. Speaking of intelligent conversations, we've got a number of guests that are going to be on the show tonight. Also, I always say this, whenever we can't do the full extra inning show on days of weekday day games, whenever we don't do those full shows, always try to give you an opportunity on Sports Open Line to call in, text in, tweet in. That's going to be more in the 7 o'clock hour. I've kind of penciled either right at the start at 7 o'clock hour or maybe 7:35-ish for that. So if you've got some thoughts on the game or anything, we'll give that opportunity for you coming up later on in the program. But guest this hour, Marcelo Balboa, who is Spanish language broadcaster with MLS Season Pass and Apple TV. He's going to join us in about 5 minutes. We'll preview City SC and Sporting KC this weekend. The great Bob Ramsey is going to join us at 6:35. We'll talk Cardinals and Billikens with Rammer. And then next hour, Ben Arnett, who is a sports director at KOMU TV in Columbia. We'll talk Mizzou football with him. As always, if you want to chime in on what we are talking about, you can call, you can text, you can tweet, you can leave a voice message. If you call or text, the phone number 314-436-7900. 314-436-7900. Tweet at me at Matt Pauley on air. Or if you're listening on the Odyssey app, click the voice message button and leave a voice message for us, and that will come right into the studio. We'll talk the City SC Sporting KC rivalry. We'll do that next. This is a Gray Bar Sports Open Line on KMOX.
213 Flashpoint Complex will take you to the next level. It increases your metabolism, fights cravings, gives you all-day focused energy with no crash, and at night, it helps you burn fat by lowering
It's Gray Bar Sports Open Line right here on KMOX. My name is Matt Pauley. Have you till 8 o'clock this evening. Big weekend coming up for City SC. It's a rivalry matchup as they play host to Sporting KC. That's going to be a 7:30 start over at City Park, and we are very happy right now to be able to welcome on to the broadcast. He's going to be part of the Spanish language broadcast on Apple TV in MLS Season Pass. He is a member of the National Soccer Hall of Fame. He is Marcelo Balboa as we bring him back on to the program. Marcelo, thanks so much for taking some time with us today. How are you?
Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
So this City team, their postseason is not something that is in the cards for them this year. But if you look at how they've played since the transfer window and bringing in some new guys, they've played better. How would you evaluate the improvement that we've seen from them over the last month or so?
No, you got to give them credit. I think that after what happened last year, expectations were high this year, and unfortunately, it just kind of fell apart a little bit for them, but they've done well. Listen, it's not easy always going to San Jose and getting a result in San Jose. So you go to New England, you get a tie out of that. So I think that Hack's done a nice job. He really has. He's found a way to put this team back together. He's found a way to get them to believe in themselves again. And it's nice to see St. Louis back to where they're not where they should be, but they're getting there.
How challenging is it when you can look at the standings and say, okay, it's not happening this year, but to actually get better during that period where it's not going to pay off at the end of the season?
It does pay off, though. See, that's the thing. That's where people, because you don't make the playoffs, they've struggled this year. We get that. But you're building now. You're building to build momentum for next year. You're building as a player. You're playing for your job. You're playing for your contract. You want to be here next year. So I think they are building towards something. They've gotten a few wins. Hack's fighting for his job. Hopefully he gets that job. You know what I mean? So I think that there's always something to play for, and no matter what situation you're in. And I think St. Louis is in a situation where everybody's fighting for something, and that's a good thing to have.
I've talked about this a lot because as I learn about MLS soccer with St. Louis still being a relatively new entry into the league, something that struck me last year at the end of the season with Bradley Carnell at his press conference after they got eliminated by Kansas City was he was talking about what they were going to do next, like it was next week. It seems like MLS soccer, and maybe this is just true about soccer across the entire world, there's more of a connection from one season to the next than there are what we're used to in other North American sports. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think you're always planning for the future. You know what I mean? You're living in the moment, but you also have other staff members who are looking for the future. That means they're looking for draft choices. That means they're looking for better players. They're looking for the transfer window. They're looking for players who are out of contract. They're looking for players that are interested in coming to MLS to make your team better. So, yeah, I think it's a divided. The coaching staff is focused on what they're doing at hand, trying to win a championship, while you have another part of your staff that's also the recruiting part of it. The player personnel part are always looking to make the team better. So, yeah, you're always playing for now, but you're always looking into the future.
City has scored 11 goals in their last 5 games, I believe. It is it's something where that was the struggle all season long, scoring. It's coming around a little bit right now. What have you seen that has allowed them to score a few more goals?
I think a little bit of confidence. This is a team that lost that confidence, that lost that swagger. And when you lose that swagger, you start doubting yourself as a player. Been there, done that, been on teams where one year you make it to the final, and then the next year you struggle because you lose that confidence. So this is a team that's gotten that confidence back. And like I said before, I think Hack's done a nice job building this team momentum back, building the confidence of each other and believing in each other. And I think that's when you look at this group, that's where they're at. They believe in each other again. And I think that's why you're starting to see some results.
This is a Kansas City team they're going to match up against this weekend, who have also struggled this year. Postseason not going to happen for them. You felt like maybe they were going to take some momentum out of their second half last season and beating City in the playoffs last year. It hasn't happened. What have you seen for them as they have struggled to gain traction?
You know what? It happens. You know what? It's sometimes you hold on to players too long. Listen, they made the U.S. Open Cup final. They lost last night to LAFC, but they reached the final. So you've got to give them a little bit of credit for that. And again, it's like anything else. I think there's certain times you need to overhaul your team. And I'm thinking right now, Kansas City is almost at that point where they're going to have to just kind of rebuild a little bit, bring in a few new players, understanding maybe a few positions that are key to make your team successful.
This St. Louis Kansas City rivalry has become a lot of fun. How important is it for MLS to have rivalries like this as the league continues to grow?
It's huge. It's huge, and I'll tell you why. Because back in the 90s when we were playing, in the early late 80s, St. Louis was soccer city for us.
Mm-hmm.
It was where we played our qualifiers. It's where players like Steve Tritchu and a bunch of players came out of St. Louis. So when you start looking at that, it's an important part of it. And now you've had Kansas City in it, SKC, you've had it. So now the in-state, even though people don't like to say it, the in-state rivalry is nice. You know what I mean? The talking trash to each other, the buildup to it. You know, maybe before it was who was Sporting Kansas City's rival? It was Colorado. Was it Chicago? Now we know it's clearly St. Louis. And we all know how important derby games are. When you look at El Tráfico, you look at the New York Derby, you look at the Rocky Mountain here, and this is huge. I think this made this league a little bit more special.
Can you share with me some of your memories of being in St. Louis for when you were training and everything, and what stands out to you about that time?
Listen, what stood out is how much people enjoyed soccer. You know what I mean? I think that was one of the key things. We didn't have a home. Soccer wasn't that big. And St. Louis Soccer Park was our home. We trained there. We practiced there. We played our games there. They brought in bleachers for us to put 10,000 people in a World Cup qualifier. So, listen, there's nothing like it. So when I heard the rumors that St. Louis was going to come back, it was well deserved. They've done so much for soccer in the late 80s, early 90s, that they deserved a team. And I'm glad they finally got one.
Couple more moments with Marcelo Balboa, who's going to be on the Spanish language broadcast on Apple TV this upcoming weekend with St. Louis City SC and Sporting Kansas City. What are your thoughts on what you have seen from a venue standpoint and a fan support standpoint for City? You think back to what this city meant to soccer back in the 90s, and now them being in MLS. What are your thoughts?
I was going to say I didn't really know what to expect when St. Louis was coming back to MLS and coming to MLS. And it's been awesome. It's one of the coolest venues we've been to. And I was asking Hack today, just the fact that what's it like? You know what I mean? You guys are struggling and it's still sold out. People come and support you guys. And he made it clear. It's Soccer City, USA. It's Soccer City. We all know what it means to St. Louis. We know what soccer means to the fans of St. Louis. So it's been something special. And it's nice when your fans, even if you have a rough season, when you have the fans still supporting, going to the game and realizing that there's improvement every day on the field.
I hear whistles behind you. Are you at training right now, or is there something going on?
I'm at training right now.
Is there have you seen anything any breaking news that you want to share with us from what you've seen?
I have not seen any breaking news. The only breaking news is we've got an awesome game Saturday night at City Park. And I look forward to being there and calling a great game.
Awesome. Very good. Marcelo Balboa, former U.S. national team defender, member of the National Soccer Hall of Fame. Thank you for the time. And before I let you go, you mentioned that you're part of the Spanish language broadcast on Apple TV. We always encourage people to subscribe. And it's very cool. It's not just the English broadcast, as mentioned, it's the Spanish language broadcast as well.
Yeah, we got English, Spanish. We have French. I believe next year is in Portuguese. They're going to have some games. So, listen, it's been awesome what Apple's been able to do. There isn't a game that you cannot see on Apple. So, join it. It's MLS Season Pass. You'll see some great games besides the messy games. You'll see other great games.
Marcelo, thank you so much for the time. Have a great call this weekend.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
All right, very good. There's Marcelo Balboa joining us live from training. So that was good to be able to hear from him. And of course, you can hear the games also on our sister station Y98. You can do the thing on Apple TV where you can overlay the Y98 broadcast on top of the Apple TV broadcast. So great audio, great video, like just everything they have done with this package on Apple TV has been top notch, and encourage you to check it out for yourself on Apple TV Plus and the MLS Season Pass subscription. All right, we'll take a break. And when we return, Bob Ramsey is going to join us. We'll talk Cardinals baseball and Billikens basketball. The Billikens men's basketball team, they are on to the practice floor. We are your home for Billikens basketball. We'll get into all that coming up in just a moment with Rammer right here on KMOX.
Retiring soon? Get the information you need by joining Kyle Jones and Matt Allgaier of Fira Capital Management for
Once again, Matt Pauley on KMOX.
It is not long from now that we are going to be hearing the voice of Bob Ramsey along with Earl Austin Jr. SLU Billikens men's basketball. As much optimism as there has been about that team and program in quite some time, we're so looking forward to that. And of course, Cardinals baseball, we still have a weekend of that. So let's talk Billikens and Cardinals baseball. We welcome in Bob Ramsey. You see him all over the place. He's got the Daily Cards Live. He does as part of Claves Online. As mentioned, he'll be back behind the microphone for Billikens basketball. Rammer, always good to talk to you. How are you?
Matt, it's great to hear your voice. How are you, my friend?
I am good. So many reasons to be excited about Billikens basketball. Before we get to that, a little Cardinals from you. Obviously disappointing that they're not a postseason club. They're going to be an above 500 club. I guess there's some value in that. There's been some young guys coming up big over the last couple of days. That's good to see. How do you just evaluate everything that's going on right now with this Cardinals team?
You know, you try to be objective, and I think there's some credit to be given. I thought the focus on the bullpen last off season is borne out to be right on. The bullpen's been very, very good. You don't count today, but despite a few hiccups, the bullpen's been great. You say, well, what about how horrible the offense has been? Well, the game plan going into the season, you would have written in about 50 more home runs between Gorman and Goldschmidt and Arenado. You would have had a bunch more home runs. My issue is by the end of June, at the latest, I think as an organization, you had to realize the game plan didn't work offensively. We're not hitting bombs. We're not a slug team, but we do have some other things we can do. Let's address that, kind of change direction as to who we are, and find ways, playing a little more old school, move runners along, those sorts of things. I know that wasn't the original plan, but you can't just say, well, this is not working, but we're going to keep trying. Obviously, that didn't work. And I think that's my biggest, complaint. My biggest concern was that as an organization, we just didn't adjust like we should have.
I can't comprehend. I can't put my hands around it. You've been around the game for a really, really long time. Maybe you've got a better idea than I do. The fact that the team struggled so much with hitting with runners in scoring position, not that they were a great offensive club when they were leading off an inning, but the numbers dropped so much with runners in scoring position, and it shouldn't change. Like, do you have any insight on why that sort of thing can happen?
The short answer is no. The long answer, Matt, goes to advanced metrics, and there is a segment of the metrics people. I'm not saying they're all this way, but have a theory is that runners in scoring position and some other things about production are not legit. In that, there's a segment that say you hit what you hit, and if you're a 240 hitter. You're a 240 hitter. If you're a three, we say, well, I want Pujols and Musial and blah, blah. Well, yeah, they hit 330. Of course they're going to hit with runners in scoring position. But when you have guys hitting 210 and 220 and 230, and to expect them to produce with runners in scoring position, it's folly. Now, I don't subscribe to that theory 100%, but I think it's reasonable to throw it out there as a talking point. And as you pointed out quite accurately, the numbers are way lower than the other averages. I think sometimes those are things that it just happens. Baseball overall is a game of the marathon, of what do the numbers look like over the course of the season. I think we in the media, I hear it on TV, on radio, our game broadcasters, you and I talking about it, the numbers don't lie, but I think we can beat it up so much that we lose focus on what it really means. What it really means is you don't have a lot of good hitters, period. And I think that's a reasonable position.
Raymond, I bet I'm more into numbers and advanced numbers than you are. Not that you're not into that at all, but I think we can both agree if you look at 225 batting average with runners in scoring position and ignore that as, well, that's just unlucky in those situations, you're not doing your job. You have to look at that number and put something into it.
First of all, I agree with you, but just for fun, what's the team batting average?
I'll have to look that up. It's better.
It's what is it, in the 230s, 240s, something like that? So it's not that
246. 246. There's a 21-point difference.
Yeah, that's much better than I'd imagine.
Yeah.
I probably watched too much.
Okay.
but yeah, I think that is right. And I think, and I'm not trying to pick on any individual players, but what has happened, it's real and it has happened, that the key guys that you're counting on to enhance that runners in scoring position number failed miserably. And, look, Paul Goldschmidt's been a great Cardinal and a great player, but he failed pretty bad when you've got, you're pushing 200 strikeouts for the guy that you thought's your best hitter. That's a real problem.
I looked at some numbers on Goldschmidt the other day. There are 23 first basemen that are qualifiers in Major League Baseball this year, and Goldschmidt's OPS for this year was 21 of the 23. Now, if you look at his numbers from July 1st on, it'd be middle of the pack. It clearly got better as the season went along, but I was shocked that his OPS ranked 21st of the 23 qualifying first basemen in Major League Baseball this year.
And the thing that everybody knows, I'm going to take the old school approach most of the time, and strikeouts are a problem. I know there are some people that don't say, oh, strikeouts don't matter. They do matter. And you just can't produce with that many strikeouts. Are there some anomalies that guys that can strike out 150 times and still mash and do those? Yeah, but generally those guys also draw a lot of walks. The strikeout walk ratio for a number of players is just you can't produce that way. Just remarkably bad. So again, I'm not trying to blame the season on Goldschmidt. I love the guy, a marvelous Cardinal, a great teammate, and has been a great player. He's not had a great season, and that's probably, I think, the beginning of the conversation.
And when you put that in terms of next year, Goldschmidt probably isn't in here, but Nolan Arenado will be. Don't they almost have to plan for next season like what we saw offensively from Arenado is probably what you're going to get next season and not count on him for being that middle of the order run producer?
I think that's reasonable. When you talk about just players, average players, yeah, he was fine because his defense was off the charts terrific. But when you look at a guy that has been a slugger and a run producer, and then this year he wasn't, that's a problem. So what you've got to try and figure out is who's going to be in the middle of the order on an organization that is truly fearful of revenue. And if you're afraid of not being able to drive revenue, what do? I wish I had an answer for him. It's a real conundrum.
Yeah, and we'll go to the Billikens in a second. Last thing, I look at this offseason and I say they're going to have to do under the hood stuff to fix the organization, to fix development, to get more people in place. But that doesn't sell tickets. That gets you winning in 2026 and beyond. Those are things this team has to do. But at the same time, how in the world do you get butts in the seats next year? You got to do some cosmetic, sexy type things. And I don't know if that's in the cards for next year.
My hope, and hope is not a plan, but my hope is that a couple of the young guys come through. We saw Mason Wynn come through with a nice year. I think it's reasonable to expect more offensive advancement from him. If one or two other guys can come through, I think it changes the tone. It might not sell you any season tickets over the winter, but you start to get people coming back when you see some of the youth play. The other thing goes back to my original comment about the Cardinals not making adjustments. You got to get back to playing fundamental, old school Cardinal baseball. will this organization go back to that? I think that's a major question. I think if they did, fans would come back. I really believe that.
Practice underway for the Billikens. We're talking with Bob Ramsey. Have you been able to get out at all? What have you seen so far in the very early going for this team in what is a brand new era?
I've seen about 8 practices so far, and it keeps getting better. First few, I could see, boy, there's some confusion. This is a completely new offense, unorthodox to the way we've seen basketball played, not just at St. Louis U, but around the country. And it's starting to take. It's taken some time, but I see the guys starting to connect with what Josh Schertz is trying to do, and it's pretty exciting.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. Ask the question.
What strikes you about the way Coach Schertz runs practice?
He reminds me of Coach Majerus in his attention to detail, and it's really been fun for me as a basketball guy to really watch it and see it take shape and the guys come along. The attention to detail, this different offense that I haven't been around, but what I do see is how it creates almost natural spacing, which allows the offense to thrive. And I'm really excited to see it continue to develop the next 5 weeks plus. And we'll get a little taste of it tomorrow at basketball night at Chaifetz Arena. The doors open at 6 o'clock. We'll see the men and the women. It's a little bit of some controlled scrimmage stuff. And I think people will start to see it developing there as well. I'm very excited to see it come along.
Yeah, just do you want to mention that for sure before we get out of here, because you mentioned the basketball night tomorrow. Event is open, free to the public. Doors open at 6. The event begins at 6:30. Concession stands will be open, so a great chance for fans to get a first look. Rammer, always appreciate your time. Hopefully we can do this a whole bunch over the next few months, and we're talking a lot of Billikens victories.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Matt, thanks for calling.
Awesome. Very good. That's Bob Ramsey, the voice of the Billikens. And we here at KMOX are the home of Billikens basketball. One more break. We'll come back and we'll wrap up hour number 1 of the program. It's a Graybar Sports Open Line on KMOX.
There are nearly 70 million
DrEyeDoc.com.
Back at it. It's a Graybar Sports Open Line right here on KMOX. My name is Matt Pauley with you for another hour and 7 minutes. We'll take you till 8 o'clock this evening. We get into the season of Sports Open Line just about every single night here moving forward, which is fun. Tomorrow with the Cardinals out west, we'll have a full show leading into Cardinals baseball. And then Sunday, that is going to wrap up the regular season and the season for the Cardinals. So Sports Open Line on just about an every night basis. Want to mention something that we're going to be doing on Monday, and hopefully, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. If I am, I'm sure I'll get a message from my boss. Something that is going to be a more common, maybe almost everyday type thing. So at noon on Monday, Tom Ackerman is going to he's going to lead a live stream video that will also include Kevin Wheeler, Bernie Miklasz, and myself. And it's going to be an hour of us basically breaking down where the Cardinals are at. Now, we're scheduled to do it at noon. The Cardinals are going to schedule their news conference if they have one on Monday for noon, and it's going to mess this whole thing up. I kid, kind of. But that's the idea, that we'll do it at noon. If something does break earlier or later than that, or if we have to be somewhere, we will adjust to it, and we'll communicate that on all of the various social media channels. But that is something that we're going to start doing more of, where it's going to be some grouping of myself, Bernie, Tom, Wheels, and we're going to do these live stream videos on an everyday basis. So here's what you need to know. You need to be following the KMOX Sports Twitter account at KMOX Sports. Does it get pushed out to like the YouTube page too? I think the KMOX Sports YouTube page it goes to. Do we live stream on the Insta? I should know these things. We do not live stream to Instagram. Kyle Sixta is giving me the no, so it does not go out to Instagram, but it does go out to the Twitter feed and also to the to YouTube. Be subscribed to those, because then you'll find out when we go live. But this is going to be one that on Monday we're going to try to make a really big deal of. It's going to be all four of us. Again, Tom's going to lead the way with Wheels and Bernie and myself being part of it. And then that's going to kick off us into doing more of these. So we can be your lunchtime companion. You take your lunch at 12 o'clock. You pull out your phone. You're at your computer, and you can watch us talk Cardinals baseball. So we are going into a period of what we think is going to be change in the organization. How much change? Don't know. And that remains the number one question, but we know there's going to be change. John Mozeliak, when he was on with Tom Ackerman on Sports on a Sunday Morning, he talked about resetting the front office. That was, if I've got it right, I think I do. I think that was a verbatim term used by John Mozeliak. I believe he said reset the front office. John Mozeliak does not say reset the front office if there are not going to be changes of note that are taking place, and they are going to be happening very soon. And like I said earlier on the show, at that point, we can start to understand where this organization might be going based off who's going to be making the decisions. Got to figure out that part first. So hopefully you are with us coming up on Monday at 12 o'clock for a special video broadcast that we are going to be doing. This is a Graybar Sports Open Line on KMOX.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements. Past results afford no guarantee of future results. Every case is different and must be
for Florissant in downtown at the Arch at 74. I'm Maria Aquina, KMOX News.
Welcome back to the Gray Bar Sports Open Line. Once again, Matt Pauley on KMOX.
We do roll on as we get into hour number 2 of the program. My name is Matt Pauley, taking you until 8 o'clock this evening. One more guest. We are going to be joined by our friend Ben Arnett. He is the sports director at KOMU TV in Columbia. We'll talk Mizzou football with him coming up in about 13 minutes. And then for the final half hour, so starting about 7:30 or so, we'll kind of open up things to you if you want to participate. Always say that when the Cardinals play a weekday day game, we don't get the opportunity to do the full extra inning show, which includes your phone calls, your text messages, your tweets, your voice messages on the Odyssey app. So if you've got any Cardinals thoughts that you want to get in here, we'll be able to talk to you. Then you can send the messages now if you want. Again, if you want to text in 314-436-7900, 314-436-7900. And you can do that right now, and we'll read some of those coming up in the final half hour of the program. Or as mentioned, hop on the Odyssey app. You might be listening already on the Odyssey app. If that's where you're listening, it makes it very, very easy. You see the microphone button. You press down the microphone button, you leave us a voice message, and it comes right into the studio, and we will try to play some of those coming up later on in the program as well. Cardinals lose today, lose in tough fashion because they give up 5 runs in the 8th inning. I'll tell you this. So I have loved what we have seen from the Cardinals bullpen this year. I think it has been nothing short of spectacular. They've not lost many games this year when having the lead going into the 7th. Today was a very, very rare thing for this team. But at the same time, and there's a lot of guys I like in this bullpen. Obviously, Ryan Helsley, JoJo Romero, Andrew Kittredge have been the 3 guys that have, for the most part, locked down the final 3 innings this year. But there's other guys who have given this team really solid innings out of the bullpen. Ryan Fernandez, who wasn't great today. Matthew Liberatore has had some really nice moments. Even a guy who struggled very much today in Kyle Leahy. He's been more good than bad this season. Chris Roycroft is another guy who's back with the team, has been more good than bad for sure. I mean, there's been a lot of pieces to this bullpen that have come through. But JoJo Romero's season came to an end yesterday. He goes on the injured list. He's got a forearm issue. They're telling us that it's not a big deal. That's just some inflammation. They're being very careful with it. No reason to push him in a season like this. So what that shows you is Kittredge is down today. You're not going to use Helsley even for 1 out in the 8th inning. And I know a lot of people like to push back on that. In fact, and the text messages that I got towards the end of the game today when folks thought we were going to be doing the normal extra inning show, a lot of those text messages were, hey, why is Helsley not pitching? Why is he not coming in to get the final out of the 8th inning? And my answer to that is really simple. And it's an answer that a lot of people don't like. And I don't completely understand why people don't like it. Because Ryan Helsley has just put together one of the best seasons a relief pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals has ever had in the history of the organization. He is now tied for the most saves in a single season. The Cardinals and Helsley made the decision going into the year what his usage was going to look like. They were going to avoid multiple innings. They were going to avoid up-downs. An up-down is when you go pitch, you go back into the dugout, you come back out and pitch again. That's an up-down. That wears on your arm. And you do that a bunch, it's going to wear on your arm, and you are more susceptible to be injured. Some people it doesn't really impact as much. They don't, there are times where we see Andrew Kittredge or JoJo Romero get the final 1 or 2 outs of one inning, and then they come back in and get the first out or 2 of the next innings. Like those guys, they don't react to the up downs the way that others do. And for Ryan Helsley, for him to stay healthy and for him to stay available, they wanted to avoid those. Now, have there been some times this year where Helsley's done it? Yeah. Generally in extra innings where he's in there and then the team takes the lead and he comes back out to convert the win. We've seen that happen a time or two, but basically he hasn't been used in that way. And I get that, like the sort of tough guy, old school baseball person is going to sit there and say, well, he can, Of course he can come get the final out of the 8th inning and sit down and then come back out for the 9th. Of course he can do that. And in a one game moment, can he do that? Yeah, he can do that. But does it make sense to do that? It doesn't. It does not. And this is a hill that I'm more than willing to die on, because I have just watched 159 games of baseball where Ryan Helsley has been one of, if not the best at his very specific position in all of Major League Baseball, in being a closer. He is tied for, no, he leads Major League Baseball in saves. He has been fantastic. And the difference for him has been his usage. So if you're one of these folks that were texting in and were really frustrated about his usage or lack of usage today because he wasn't the guy to come in for the 8th inning, the only thing I would say to you is to take a step back and look at the body of work this year, and just for a split second, allow to come into your mind the idea that the reason Ryan Helsley has been so good this year is because of his availability. And the reason he has been available all year is because of his usage. If you are willing to push down those dominoes, if you can be open-minded about that, that's what I would implore you to at least consider. Because there is zero reason to have Ryan Helsley the day after he pitches. And yeah, he only threw one pitch in the game yesterday, but he warmed up and everything. There's more strain than just throwing the one pitch that he threw yesterday. You're not going to ask him on a back-to-back to have an up-down in a season where you're not even going to the playoffs. That's just not going to happen. Now, if the Cardinals are a game out of a playoff spot and playing this game today, and you're in that exact same spot, and your choices are Riley O'Brien, Chris Roycroft, Kyle Leahy, or Ryan Helsley for 4 outs, and it is, what's the date today? It's September 26th. You're in the 4th to last game of the season, and there's something to play for. I am more than willing to have a different take on it. I'm not more than willing to have a different take on it on June 1st. If they lose the game like this on June 1st because they were unwilling to use Ryan Helsley as an up-down, I'm sitting here telling you that makes all the sense in the world. Of course you shouldn't do that. So the stakes change. If today's a day that they really, really need to win, and it's going to go a long way towards them being a playoff team, or it's going to go a long way towards them winning a division, then yeah, we can have that conversation. I'm not closed-minded to that, saying that you never ask him to do that. But I am willing to sit here and say he's just put together an incredible season. It's based on availability. Let's give the Cardinals and Oliver Marmol and Dusty Blake and everybody who was part of this decision. I know this is foreign to a lot of people, but let's give them a little bit of credit here. They went through a decision-making process on how to best use Ryan Helsley, and it worked with flying colors. That's the fact. And I know people are not running around trying to give credit, but that's where credit is well-deserved. So no, Ryan Helsley should not have gotten the final out today. And it's probably more valuable to the Cardinals not to have him go through an up-down than it is to lose this game today in a season where you're not playing for anything at this point. You're trying to finish above 500. You need to win one more game for that to happen. How terrible would it be if Helsley has the up-down today and then tomorrow we learn that he feels some soreness in his shoulder or something, and it completely derails his offseason? And you go, that stinks. Shouldn't have. Did we really need to use him for 4 outs? Like that's what you're trying to avoid. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll talk some Mizzou football. Up next, we are going to be joined by KOMU TV's Ben Arnett. He's with us in just a moment. This is a Gray Bar Sports Open Line on KMOX.
We agreed to do a debate on October 1st, and I said, yes, absolutely, because the American people deserve it.
And Tuesday night, they'll do just that.
advocates, real solutions for real people.
From city lights to neighborhood stories, KMOX's local newsroom keeps you informed. Always live on the free Odyssey app.
It's a Gray Bar Sports Open Line right here on KMOX. Mizzou football this past weekend. A win is a win. It certainly was not an impressive win, but they were able to survive against Vanderbilt in double overtime, 30-27. They get a little bit of time now. They don't play this weekend, and then they go to a really tough place to play in College Station when they match up against Texas A&M coming up on the morning of Saturday, October 5th. To talk all things Mizzou athletics, we're very happy to be able to welcome onto the program. He is the sports director at KOMU Television in Columbia. He is Ben Arnett. You follow him at Ben Arnett, ARNET, KOMU on Twitter. Ben, appreciate you taking time with us today. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am good. Appreciate being able to spend some time with you and get your thoughts. Before we get to the actual team, I when good stuff and positive stuff happens, I like to make note of it. We learned that Brady Cook is on the watch list for the Jason Witten Collegiate Man of the Year Award. Cook, a St. Louis guy. And this is a really nice honor for a guy who does a lot in his life beyond what he does just on the football field.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder how anybody could boo him. But, yeah, I mean, he's really active in the community. I mean, I think Brady Cook has done a great job of, really guiding this program for the last few years. People forget, I mean, he committed to Barry Odom. That's how long he's been in and around the program. And I know a lot of people know his story of going to, games with his uncle as a kid and wearing the Chase Daniel jersey in the crowd and his uncle sneaking him into the student section and everything. And Eli Drinkwood says this a lot, and it's true that Brady Cook loves Mizzou, and he wants to be the quarterback at the University of Missouri, and he has his entire life, and you can see it in everything he does on and off the field.
That's a rare thing in today's college athletics, and I'm not an anti-NIL guy. I hope that isn't how I come across here, but NIL has changed things. I mean, we just saw the UNLV quarterback walk away from the program because he feels like he hasn't gotten what he agreed to. Less and less of these 18 to 22-year-olds are walking into colleges saying, I'm playing here because this is what I love.
Yeah, this system, and I'm not anti-NIL either. I'm pro-NIL. I'm pro-revenue sharing with the athletes. But this system is not working for anybody if this is the result of it. And the problem is you've got, do the math. There's something like 12,000 scholarship FBS Division I football players in America playing for over 130 programs, which means over 130 head coaches, over 130 athletic directors, over 130 presidents, chancellors, boards of curators. You've got 12, 15, 16, however many FBS conferences with that many conference commissioners. It's not like the NFL, where you've got the Players Association and a commissioner representing the owners that can get together and negotiate solutions. It's a really big problem in college football. I really feel like this week, and this isn't on the subject of Mizzou, but since we're talking about it, this is a big inflection point, because it wasn't just a UNLV quarterback. A backup running back on that team did the same thing later in the day. A former top 100 recruit at USC on the defensive line did the same thing the next day. There has to get to a point where both sides feel security and feel like they have an honest agreement negotiated on both sides to be able to get back to that, what we're talking about of, hey, look, this player really wants to play for this team. This coach really wants to coach this player. Everybody's in this together instead of constantly having one foot out the door and feeling like a free agent every 12 months.
Well, it's not the exact same thing, but right now we're watching the Pac-12, what exists of it still in the Mountain West, starting to sue each other, and schools are being asked to sign, grants to commit to leagues, and one school won't do it, so then everything else goes out the door. This week, it's more than just these NIL deals. It feels like the waves and the water is very unsettled once again in college athletics.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the SEC is doing just fine, and I'll tell you why. The latest deal that came across, we were just looking at it for my 6 o'clock show today. It's the Mountain West, and the Mountain West stayed together for one reason, and that's because they were able to convince UNLV to stay in the league and not go to the Pac-12 for a larger revenue share. They have unequal revenue sharing in almost every single conference in America except the SEC. If you want to know why all this stuff keeps happening and everything else is in flux, but the Southeastern Conference maintains, it's because they have equal revenue sharing across the board. And I laugh sometimes whenever people say, oh, Alabama runs the league or Georgia. No, I'm telling you, I spent 10 years working for Mizzou Athletics. 9 of those years, Mizzou was in the SEC. It was a vast difference between the Big 12 and the SEC. The thing that maintains harmony in the Southeastern Conference is everybody is treated the same and everybody shares equally. And this is just going to keep happening as long as you have conferences who are not sharing things equally. Resentments build, and it leads to destabilization.
Well, the Big 12 sold their soul to Texas and to a lesser extent Oklahoma. Those programs have now left to go to the SEC, and I think the Big 12 should be credited for what they've done on the back end of stabilizing that league. But I spent 6 years working at the Air Force Academy doing broadcast for them, and they're right there with UNLV, and they're a big part of keeping the Mountain West together. And I'm happy for Air Force that they're going to get some money. But to your point, at some point down the road, these other schools in that league are going to say, hey, why is UNLV? Why is Air Force? Why are these other programs getting a little bit more than us?
It's a stopgap, and I think you're probably going to see the same thing in the Big 12 conference, especially as that conference expands and their expenses rise dramatically, which is what you're going to see, across the country. It probably won't impact the Big 10 as much because they have so much more revenue built into their system, and Oregon and USC, et cetera, are going to be able to afford to do this. They negotiated higher, along with the SEC, higher payouts from the college football playoff. So they're going to be able to build things like revenue sharing and increased travel costs into their budgets as time goes on. But you're not going to be able to do that in Manhattan, Kansas. So I think things may stabilize for a couple of years, but ultimately there's going to be more flux throughout college sports.
All right, let's get into Mizzou a little bit. Fans are concerned. They have not been impressive in their last 2 games, but they've won each of them. BC's a good team, but there were some, not maybe startling's too strong of a word, but certainly some things to take note of in that game. And then there probably were startling things that happened in the Vanderbilt game. How much do you take that as, look, they didn't play their best, but they found a way to win? That's all that matters. And how much do you say, okay, there are some things that we've seen from this Tigers team that they got to fix before they get into the meat of SEC play?
Well, it's both. I mean, being 4-0 is the goal. and Brady Cook said that after the game on Saturday. Hey, look, they're not necessarily happy with how they got there, but they got to where they needed to be. It reminds me somewhat similar to the stretch last year, the wins over Middle Tennessee and Memphis, where they found ways to win, but they definitely looked like a flawed football team. I think part of it goes to the offensive line, and that was a big part of what turned things around last year, where they were able to, under a first-year offensive line coach a year ago, now in his second season, they were able to get people in the right places and were able to really shore up their protection. Brady Cook got sacked 3 times on Saturday. That certainly doesn't help. And, part of it also is just working out the kinks on offense and figuring out what's going to work for this particular group. They're always trying to use Luther Burden in different ways. They've had to incorporate these 2 new running backs. I think that's a positive thing to look at. Things are working with Nate Noel. He's coming off 2 straight 100-yard rushing games, almost 200 against Vanderbilt. Another area that they really need to focus on is, I mentioned it on my show, Mizzou Extra, this week, and talking with Howard Richards from the Tiger Radio Network. Eli Drinkwitz has had to say the words busted coverage more times in the last 3 weeks than he had in his previous 4 years at Mizzou. And that's another situation where you've got a lot of new faces playing for a new defensive coordinator, and they've got to get on the same page there. And it makes you wonder if, losing those 5 starters to the NFL from last year's team, there's going to be a need for other people to step up. There's a lot of new faces on that defensive line. Makes you wonder if maybe communication is not as good as it will be by the end of this year. And, Eli said it best. He after that Vanderbilt game, he said, we're not thinking about Texas A&M right now. They're thinking about, they got to take a good long look at what they're doing on both sides of the ball to eliminate these consistent issues. The busted coverages on defense that have led to some big plays, and the red zone inefficiency. They've been in the red zone 20 times offensively. They've scored 10 touchdowns, and that's not good enough.
We're talking with Ben Arnett from KOMU TV in Columbia. Are you at all surprised? And look, I get who Murray State and Buffalo are, that those are not great schools, but great programs. But they put up goose eggs in each of those games defensively. They did not allow them to score. They were dominant from a defensive standpoint. Are you surprised that they went from being that dominant, even against lesser opponents, to having the defensive issues that they've had the last 2 weeks?
Not in hindsight, because I think when you look back at the Murray State and Buffalo games, those were really flawed quarterbacks. I can remember sitting watching the first couple of series of the Buffalo game, and they were getting pressure on that quarterback, and he was airmailing everything. I mean, they were able to, just throw speed and talent on the defensive line at those two quarterbacks, and they were able to completely disrupt the offenses of those first two schools. When they started playing a couple of really good dual threat quarterbacks who are really good decision makers and are also really good on the move, in Castellanos for BC and Pavia for Vanderbilt, they weren't able to just throw a bunch of pressure at him and completely disrupt everything in the offense. We saw with Castellanos and Pavia both. They were able to use their legs, buy time, find open receivers, pick up chunk yardage with their legs and that kind of stuff. And better teams and better coach teams at a higher level. So they've got to figure out how to compete against better programs, because it only gets more difficult from here, as everybody knows, in the SEC. So that's an area they got to look at here over the bye week and into next week's preparation.
He is Ben Arnett, sports director, KOMU TV in Columbia, at Ben Arnett, KOMU on Twitter. Ben, always appreciate the time. I'm sure we'll talk again down the line.
Yeah, anytime. Happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's Ben Arnett. Great stuff from him, talking all things Mizzou athletics, all things college athletics as well. That's now that we're getting back into a period where we're going to have a lot of sports open lines. That's something that you're kind of new to listening to me. That's something you're probably going to hear me talk about a fair amount. I'm pretty passionate about what's going on right now in the world of college athletics, and very frustrating this week when we see collegiate players just walking away from their teams 3 games in so they can still utilize their redshirt season for NIL purposes. Again, I'm not anti-NIL, but I am anti a kid just walking away from his team in the middle of the season. I'm sick. I am sick of realignment. I'm done. At some point, the college sports landscape has to be what it's going to be. For years and years and years and years, there was a small move here, a small move there, but nothing major. And now the better part of the last 10 years, it's just constant movement. Let's get this thing figured out and be done with it. I am sick of college football and therefore college athletics overall realignment. I'm sick of it. And you're going to hear me talk about it. Got to complain to somebody. You're the lucky ones. All right. We'll do what we normally do at during a extra inning show. We're going to open up the forum to you, or the floor to you. We'll let it be your forum as we'll talk Cardinals baseball. If you want to get in here, multiple ways to get connected. 314-436-7900. 314-436-7900. That's how you call or text. You tweet at me at Matt Pauley on air, or you leave a voice message on the Odyssey app. We've got more coming up in just a moment right here on KMOX.
What's it going to take for you to realize the IRS is in full-blown attack mode, and if you have IRS issues, your timely response is critical.
game here. Touchdown, Kansas City! Segment Cancer Center game time. Immediately following Cardinals baseball on your home for Chiefs football. KMOX.
It's a Gray Bar Sports Open Line right here on KMOX. My name is Matt Pauley. If you want to get involved with the program, this is your opportunity to do so. We will take text messages, we will take phone calls, we'll take tweets, and we'll take voice messages. If you call or text, the phone number is 314-436-7900, 314-436-7900. If you want to tweet at Matt Pauley on air, MattPauley on air, or if you want to leave a voice message, you do message. I got real southern there for a second. If you want to leave a voice message, you can do that on the Odyssey app. I did live in Georgia for a good 5 months, so whenever I lived in Wisconsin for 6 years. So if all of a sudden if one of those comes out, it's like, okay, there's if a Southern thing comes out. Well, I lived in Georgia at one point. I once did not get a job because somebody said I had a Midwest accent, and I didn't even completely know what that was. It was a job, and it was a job that I was nowhere near qualified for. I was fresh out of college, and it was a job in Denver doing daily sports talk. I would have lost the job in about 90 seconds. So it's good that I didn't. But yeah, I was told I had a Midwest accent and did not get that job. And I don't even know completely what that means. All right. Again, if you want to get in here, 314-436-7900. That's how you call. That's how you text. You can tweet at me at Matt Pauley on air. We were talking, I don't want to spend too much time here. I did the Ryan Helsley thing earlier and talked through that, but just a couple reactions to that on the text line from the 314. You talk as though Ryan Helsley is Mariano Rivera. If he were on that level, he'd be effective over more than one inning. You go ahead and die on that hill. So what I said, if you're just now tuning in, you missed the conversation earlier. It was me saying why Ryan Helsley is going to be a one-inning guy and why it was good that the Cardinals did not bring him in for the 8th inning today. If you missed it, you can always re-listen to things. Just press the rewind button if you're listening on the Odyssey app. Look, this is really simple. What would you rather? Would you rather have the major league leader in saves, who has been arguably the most dominant closer in baseball this year, if not the one of the? Would you rather have that guy? Or would you rather have a guy who's not available to you very much, who's injured and not as effective, but you know what? We'll use him in the 7th inning sometimes. What would you rather have? The answer is obvious and clear. So yes, definitely a hill that I am more than willing to die on. You make something the Cardinals are not great at is making players the best version of themselves. That's what they got to get better. Whenever I sit here and I talk to you about the infrastructure that the organization needs to put in place, about the data and technology that they need to be using more of and investing in. Whenever I'm talking about those things to you, the reason I think that is such a big deal is because the organizations, the teams that use that stuff effectively, what they do is they allow players to become the best version of themselves. And look, sometimes you let a player become the best version of themselves by not letting them face right-handers or not letting them face left-handers. Or there's a pitcher who gets hit a lot on his fastball or on his sweeper or on a slider, and you say, stop throwing that. Or a guy is really effective with a pitch, and you say, throw that more. Throw that thing down the middle. You're still gonna have success with it. It's about going out and making guys the best version of themselves. And guess what? The Cardinals made Ryan Helsley the best version of himself. Credit to the Cardinals. They looked at him. They looked at how his body bounced back. They look at how his body reacts to multiple innings and up downs and games and all of that stuff. And they said, this is how we're going to use him. And it worked. And he's been spectacular. And now people get butthurt about the fact that he doesn't pitch multiple innings. No. It's a crazy thing that we keep having this conversation over and over and over. It's a crazy thing. Let's go to Tom, who's giving us a call. Hey, Tom, you're on Sports Open Line.
Hi, thank you. What are your thoughts on that same subject? What are your thoughts about, or did they say in the postgame why he didn't bring Helsley in today? We only pitched one pitch yesterday.
Yeah, because
Why they never-
you're not going to have him do an up down. It's everything that I've just said. He's been used the way that he's been used all year, and he's having a great year.
Okay, but the reason I called in was a comment, and it dawned on me yesterday because I've been frustrated all year. I've been frustrated the past several years. The way Mo pays these guys, and then whether they're good or bad, they're going to play because Mo paid them. You go back to Cecil. Right now, you got Matz. If he's paying them, we're going to be there. And the only thing all of a sudden it dawned on me, that's why Mo's going to be here next year and Ollie's going to be here next year, because DeWitt's the same way. DeWitt's not going to fire Mo because he's not going to pay Mo to sit at home. So that's just my thoughts, and you could disagree, but I think it starts with DeWitt or Dimwitz and works all the way down to the line.
Tom, I had no problem with your point, but what's the point in calling somebody a name? You there, Tom?
It was a Freudian slip.
Was it? Or really?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yep.
Because I try to keep things above board here. I try not to call people names. We can have a conversation. We can have a conversation about Bill DeWitt all you want, but I don't know why you have to act like a 12-year-old and call him a name.
You know, when I said that, that's the way he's referred to most of the time on social media anymore, and I guess it just slipped out.
Tom, how would you feel if I brought you onto the program and I said, Idiot Tom has given us a call. Let's go to Idiot Tom on the line. You wouldn't like that, would you?
Well, compared to what my wife calls me, it's not that bad.
All right, appreciate the phone call, Tom. Look, that's one of my things. We don't call people names. We're mature adults here. We don't call people names. You can be as critical as you want to be about the DeWitts and the direction that this organization has gone under their leadership. Calling people names is stupid, and I don't do it on this show. I just don't. That's my thing. Tom is right that the Cardinals do not pay people not to work. That is not really something that they do. And I think I think this is a bit of an inflection point. Kevin Wheeler and I have talked a lot about this here recently. Let's say Miles Mikolas has the exact same type of season next year as he's having this season. Miles Mikolas is statistically one of the worst pitchers in baseball. He has a good outing here, a good outing there, but Miles Mikolas is one of the statistically worst pitchers in baseball, and you're paying him a bunch of money. So it comes down to the decision that you have to make. If you can't fix them, and maybe they can, but if you can't fix them, then you've got a decision as an organization to make. Do you pay him to not win games by going out there and hurting you? Or do you pay him to not hurt you or not help you because he's not around anymore? And you just kind of eat the salary, whether that means he's the last guy in the bullpen, or whether you release him, or whether you trade him to another team and you eat the vast majority of salary. Yeah, the Cardinals do not like to pay people not to work. I don't think anybody likes to pay people not to work. But I would say that is a very true thing. Tom was right when he said that. Now, I think the John Mozeliak thing is a little bit different, because even if he's not making the decisions next year, even if they do make the decision to move on from him as president of baseball operations, he's still going to be in the organization. He's still going to be doing other work potentially. Even once his contract is up, it wouldn't shock me to see him have some sort of advisory role or something. So you'd still be paying him to work. You might not be paying him to do the job that you initially were paying him to do when you signed the contract. So I don't think that is and even the Marmol money. Look, if they were to move on from Mozeliak this offseason, if next year there was a new president of baseball operations, even if Mo is in the organization still, if it's Chaim Bloom, because that's the name that everybody mentions, if all of a sudden Chaim Bloom, if we find out on Monday that Chaim Bloom is the new president of baseball operations, as an organization, you have to allow him to have a manager in place that he's comfortable with. And if he were not comfortable with Oliver Marmol, I think they would move on from Marmol at that point. The money that he is owed, be damned, for lack of a better term. And so I don't think the whole paying guys not to work thing is so impactful when it comes to Mo and when it comes to Marmol. What happens with those guys, I think, happens outside of the idea of the money. But what I do think, from a player standpoint, whether it is Steven Matz, whether it is Miles Michaelis, any guy that is under contract on a pretty big number next year, I have a hard time believing that, again, to Tom's point, that they're going to pay him not to work. I just don't think that's going to happen. And it might be something that they need to do to, again, be the best version of themselves. We'll take a break, come back, have more in just a moment. This is a Graybar Sports Open Line on KMOX.
When you have Rhino Shield on your house, it does a couple of things for you. It beautifies
metabolism, fights cravings, gives you all-day focused energy with no crash, and at night, it helps you burn fat by lowering cortisol levels. 213 Flashpoint Complex is available at Supplement Superstores. Find your location at supplementsuperstores.com.
Welcome back to the Graybar Sports Open Line. Once again, Matt Pauley on KMOX.
Just a few minutes left here in the program. It's a Graybar Sports Open Line right here on KMOX. My name is Matt Pauley, wrapping things up. We're going to talk a lot about this over the next few weeks. And Katie Woo tweeted something today, which it was I think it's, I don't know where the Cardinals go. That's going to be a lot of this offseason. I don't know where they go. So what Katie tweeted earlier today, and I think it was just after Jordan Walker misplayed that ball in right field. Katie tweeted, "It's not for a lack of effort, but Jordan Walker should not be in the outfield next year." I don't disagree in the sense that he's not very good out there. In fact, he's taken a step back. At one point, it looked like he was moving towards being an average to a slightly above average defensive outfielder. And maybe that's why I keep up the hope that that's what he's going to be able to return to. But there's been so much of a focus on his hitting that maybe that's gone away from him. But this is where the Cardinals have a problem. This offseason is so vitally important for Jordan Walker to get his swing right, to be the production middle of the order, damage producing hitter that he is supposed to be. And bluntly, I don't want him futzing around with becoming a first baseman or something else. That's not the priority this offseason. Maybe it'll be a priority in another offseason, but it can't be the priority this offseason. So I don't know where you go with him. Yeah, he can DH a little bit, but he almost has to be in the outfield next year because I don't want to waste any time on him learning another position defensively. And he came up as a third baseman, so he's got some infield work, but still. And we'll talk more about this moving forward. You got to get his swing right. That's got to be priority number one. This is Graybar Sports Open Line on KMOX.
I'm Brian Westbrook with Coalition Life. While we celebrate the reversal of Roe versus Wade, there is still much work to be done to